Welcome back everyone. So a few weeks ago I created a poll asking what iceberg you guys want to see next, and you guys decided to go with the Unintentionally Creepy Media Iceberg created by Night Owl 19. Unintentionally scary things are exactly what they sound like, things that trigger a feeling of anxiety within ourselves that weren't originally made for that purpose. The first couple layers will cover things that may seem more trivial and are much more commonly known, but as we dive deeper we'll come across much more obscure and unsettling entries. Today we'll be going over layers 1 and 2 and then cover the rest in future parts. So sit back and relax as we begin our dive into the Unintentionally Creepy Media Iceberg. Super Mario 64 is a classic and immensely influential video game on the Nintendo 64 that has still found its way into many people's lives today. Many players have fond memories of their playthroughs, but upon revisiting the game today, they may find that certain parts of the game are oddly disturbing for a children's video game, such as this eel. In modern times, Super Mario 64 would see a resurgence as many creators would begin uploading disturbing found footage style videos with original Super Mario 64 content. Additionally, many creepypastas and various disturbing theories would begin surfacing about the game. But what exactly makes the game so eerie? Many of us nowadays can't take creepypastas seriously at all and even find some of them laughable. But when we come across theories such as the L is real theory, the L referring to Luigi, and discover that there indeed was source code out there for Luigi to be put into the game, we begin to feel a little bit unsettled. Perhaps there is some truth to some of these theories. In Super Mario 64, there is a star statue with some text that is very tough to read, but you can more or less make out the length of each word and letter. Many people would think that the text on the statue reads L is real 2401. Some enthusiasts would assume that the 2401 is a code that can be used somewhere in the game to unlock Luigi. In mid-2020, a massive source code leak would surface, but the leak wouldn't be what catches people's attention, rather the date it was released. This leak would come out 24 years and 1 month after the release of the original game. Of course, this would encourage many theorists to try and scour the game to find out what other secrets and theories may be true. These pieces of disturbing lore and theories can all be found in this expansive Super Mario 64 iceberg. Unfortunately, many YouTubers have already covered this iceberg, otherwise I'd cover it myself, but nevertheless, give those videos a watch if you would like to learn more about the Super Mario 64 rabbit hole. As someone who spends a lot of their day on the internet, I often find myself worried that I could have my personal data stolen at any given moment. Luckily, with Atlas VPN, I no longer have to worry about that ever again. I've always put off getting a VPN thinking that the task would be much too complicated to set up, but Atlas VPN has a very easy to understand display, letting you know that your internet traffic is both protected and encrypted. But Atlas is more than just a VPN. Atlas will block all malicious links, ads, and trackers. Plus, they will notify you whenever someone is attempting to steal your data. For a limited time, Atlas VPN is offering a huge discount, granting you a 3-year subscription for just $1.99 a month. This is currently the absolute best deal on the market for a top-notch VPN service. And in case you're worried you might not be satisfied with their service, you're also eligible for a 30-day money-back guarantee. Furthermore, I'm sure many of you are getting bored with the shows that are offered on streaming services such as Netflix. When using Atlas VPN to change your digital location, you are greeted with a plethora of new content that is exclusive to other locations. Moreover, with only one subscription, you have access to Atlas VPN on unlimited devices. With over 6 million users worldwide and servers available in over 500 countries, there's no better time to grab yourself a subscription to Atlas VPN than now. But act fast, as a $1.99 a month for 3 years offer is not here to stay. Visit my link in the description or in the pinned comment to take advantage of this limited time offer and protect your data today. Nowadays, I don't think anyone would say that a child's toy would appear scary. However, if we take a look at the toys available around the early to mid 1900s, we can uncover some very disturbing dolls that we probably wouldn't deem as suitable for children. In fact, children may greet these dolls with outspread arms, while adults will trek away from these porcelain toys. But why is that? Is it the oddly lifelike Uncanny Valley faces? Or maybe perhaps it's the feeling of being watched by the dolls when you are alone? In 2013, psychologist Frank McAndrew wrote a small paper about what the word creepiness really means. McAndrew concluded that the feeling of being creeped out is a result of mixed messages. When we are clearly frightened, we scream. When we are disgusted, we will puke. But when something is creepy, we are not sure if it's dangerous enough for us to run away or to stay put. Dolls fall under this term of creepiness as they resemble humans, but we know they are only inanimate objects. Human brains are wired to read faces to gather important information, but when we see the petrified expressions on a doll, our brains don't know how to process the information as the face looks human but isn't. Coco Melon is a children's YouTube channel with almost 150 million subscribers. The channel mainly consists of children's songs, and many adults have stated their discomfort towards the channel as it gives off feelings of uneasiness. But of course, the channel is definitely doing something right if they are able to retain the attention of children despite adults being disturbed by the content. Personally, I don't find anything very odd about Coco Melon. After I skimmed through a couple of the videos, it really just felt like any other kind of children's media. But of course, some people feel the characters in the videos are unnatural and the voices used for singing almost seem as though they aren't real people, but instead some sort of computer-generated voice. YouTube Kids is a separate app made for, well, kids. But this entry is referring to the odd content that shows up in the recommended feed or upcoming videos that have nothing to do with the standard children's content a child may be viewing. While not all of these are exactly inappropriate for children, many adults and young adults may find some of the content unsettling, such as the Johnny Johnny Yes Papa meme from Coco Melon that just has a very Uncanny Valley-like feel to the models. But on the other hand, you'll have things like this where we can see Minnie cut off Mickey's ear with scissors, or when bootleg characters such as Mickey or Minnie would be found pregnant and then pissing on each other. I would hardly call this appropriate for children. These creators obviously know what they are doing though, taking advantage of a young child's mind, knowing that having a shocking thumbnail or title saying "not for kids" would make them all the more eager to click on the video. This would rack in hundreds of thousands, even millions in ad revenue for these creators. Many of you may recall years back the event labeled as ElsaGate, where many videos that would not be suitable for kids would get past the child safety algorithms that YouTube has in place. I'll throw up just a few thumbnails to show you guys what exactly these videos were about. Eventually, around 2017, public awareness on this topic would peak, forcing YouTube to immediately enforce stricter guidelines to stop these videos from gracing the screens of children. But of course, every now and again, a video will slip through that is not appropriate for children. Error messages, or more specifically anti-piracy screens, have been something that really got me unnerved in my childhood. While I didn't come across them very often, when I did, it left me not wanting to revisit whatever it was that gave me the warning. There's something about being caught doing something that you're not supposed to that gives us an unnecessary feeling of dread. There are many fake over-the-top anti-piracy screens that cross into the realms of creepypasta, but I would like to take a look at some of the fan-made anti-piracy screens that are able to convey a feeling of anxiety without any blatant jump scares and such. For example, here in a Mario Kart game, we are playing as Peach, but suddenly the game freezes and then crashes. Promptly, we are greeted with this screen telling us that we have unlocked a new character, but is just Peach with her eyes gouged out. Upon starting up the game again, we are forced to select a mangled Peach, and when the race begins, the map is completely blacked out and distorted, with a glitched audio loop playing in the background. Chuck E. Cheese, an almost extinct restaurant franchise in the US, home of Charles Entertainment Cheese. This entry is pretty self-explanatory. The animatronics used in certain Chuck E. Cheese establishments just give us an uncomfortable feeling, with their beady eyes that just stare lifelessly at you. And if we take a look at the older models of these animatronics, specifically of Charles, we find that they are even more unsettling. The dark outlines around the eyes with the tiny pupils glaring right at you, and then those toes. I don't know what it is about those toes, but they just look really, really unsettling to me. All of this bundled up in a really tall animatronic is just terrifying. Now, I couldn't find the height of all of the animatronics, but one of them, called the King, stood at 9 feet tall. So I'd assume that the rest were more or less in that range of about upper 6 feet to 8 feet tall. Furthermore, many of the pictures of these old animatronics are shot on outdated cameras, which just gives them an even more sinister look when there's poor lighting. When I searched this entry on YouTube, I was actually incredibly surprised to find that the annoying orange was still uploading. This entry falls under this iceberg for similar reasoning as the earlier Coco Melon entry. In case you never heard of Annoying Orange, it's a YouTube channel that focuses on various fruits with these faces plastered onto them. Some people may find these slightly off-putting, but overall there isn't anything really scary about this channel. Earlier we talked about creepy dolls, and to be honest, I didn't find those dolls all that creepy, but ventriloquist dummies on the other hand, now those, for whatever reason, I find much more creepier. Just a simple Google search and all of these are just weird, but why are they so creepy? Yet again, it's because they are supposed to resemble something lifelike when in fact they are not alive. So our minds instantly don't know what to do with the visual information that we are consuming. Furthermore, these dummies typically have over-exaggerated features that their ventriloquist has, which just makes this all the more worse. Here we can see Anthony Hopkins in the 70s and then a ventriloquist dummy that was made based off of him. Additionally, something that these have over typical dolls is the ventriloquist is quote-unquote bringing life to the dummies. Something that is lifeless and shouldn't be able to move is now moving. Then when the ventriloquist adds a cartoonish voice, the entire atmosphere just becomes very uncanny, and I am just not a fan. Something from my own experience I want to mention is way back, I forgot what age I was, but I was still afraid of the dark at the time. I was watching Family Guy at night on Fox, and the show would cut to a commercial break. The commercial was just some generic shill of some product, I can't remember exactly what it was, but about 5 to 10 seconds into that commercial, it would glitch out and then the jigsaw doll would come crashing into the screen, rambling and screaming. And that absolutely terrified me as a child. I tried finding the commercial on YouTube, but I failed at locating it. If you guys remember the commercial, let me know in the comments. Maybe it was just all a fever dream of mine. Weather alerts are exactly what they sound like. When there is an incoming tornado, tsunami, or storm, we will get an alert telling us to either prepare for it immediately or to flee the vicinity. Weather alerts are a more specific branch within emergency alert systems or an EAS. I'm sure all of you have at least gotten an Amber Alert before. That itself is also an example of an EAS. Of course, these are only meant to keep people safe and notify them that there is something incoming that is dangerous, and while they do accomplish this, they often use extremely eerie alarms to get people's attentions. I'm not going to spend too much time on this entry since it's similar to the earlier Chuck E. Cheese animatronics entry, but I think I'd argue that these are a little more creepy, or at least the older versions are. Just take a look at some of these older Disney mascot costumes. Those pale faces and gaping eye holes just burn a hole into your soul. These characters are supposed to look cartoony and cute, but instead they missed so badly. When I was a kid, I was already terrified of people in the more modern costumes, so if I ever came across one of these older versions as a kid, I know I just would never get another second of sleep ever again. Another image that I would like to take a look at is this one right here. Both the Mickey and Minnie masks just give me the impression that they're gonna try to invade my home and just murder me. Unfortunately though, even in modern times, we still have creepy mascot costumes. Here we can see the Flyers mascot known as Gritty, and this design is just absolutely nightmare fuel. And then the New Orleans Pelicans mascot isn't that much better. That red beak and then the greenish yellowish fur is just a terrible looking combination. This mascot was actually so poorly received that they actually redesigned the mascot just a little bit, but I still dislike the design of this costume entirely. I personally didn't find Ronald too scary as a child, but I know lots of people suffer from a fear of clowns, that fear being known as coulrophobia. Ronald of course was meant to be an attraction to grab the attention of children. Those kids would then beg their parents to buy them McDonald's. But yet again, the execs have missed by a pretty fair margin with the design of this character. Ronald for many is nothing but just nightmare fuel, with his hellish red hair, a lack of eyebrows, and then that excessive amount of red paint on his mouth all make him a terrible sight to look at. Moreover, those massive boots he wears along with those oversized pants don't help with making the character look more inviting. I'm not sure of the exact date, but sometime in the 2010s, McDonald's in the UK actually removed all Ronald McDonald displays from inside their restaurants. While I'm not a fan of the Burger King fast food chain, I actually don't dislike this mascot design. But of course, I do think I'm in the minority. Many people find this petrified face as well as the various settings where the king is present in the ads kind of creepy. For example, here the Burger King mascot can be found lying next to a stranger in bed. Burger King has a lot of other commercials with a similar premise where you can find the king stalking someone to present them with some item from the Burger King restaurant. Understandably though, the setting of these ads along with the design of the king can make some people uncomfortable. If you spent any amount of time in the disturbing media / horror niche on YouTube, you've likely come across a few videos on the Uncanny Valley. The Uncanny Valley refers to a hypothesized emotional response when an object bears some level of resemblance to a human being. The hypothesis suggests that humanoid objects that imperfectly resemble actual humans provoke uncanny or strangely familiar feelings of uneasiness and revulsion upon observing. The valley part of the term refers to a dip in the human observer's affinity for the replica. When someone would view a replica that highly resembles a human, this dip would either be lessened or just non-existent. Many of these Uncanny Valley faces come from modern humanoid robots or highly exaggerated police sketches and never fail to give off a feeling of anxiety when viewed late at night. This entry was a little tough for me to find actual examples for, but I know for a fact in the 2000s I played a few of these that occasionally made me feel uncomfortable. One example that I was able to come across is this game called Jumpstart Adventures 4th Grade Haunted Island. I'll go ahead and play the intro for you all to see. Now, while that intro may not seem scary to most of you who have grown up, I definitely think it would cause children to somewhat cower away in fear. As the name would suggest, this entire game is horror themed and has many other stages that could cause trauma in some kids. For example, this stage here has a brief cutscene where you walk through a dark forest, and from what I heard, you will occasionally be stopped or jump scared by ghosts as you travel around the game. Again, I can't recall any other examples from my childhood, but I know I played a few of them and I definitely did not enjoy the experience back then. Adult Swim sign-on refers to the transition from Cartoon Network to Adult Swim late at night, but along with the sign-on, there would be various commercials that are shown on Adult Swim that are much more creepier. Of course, Adult Swim was intended for a more mature audience relative to Cartoon Network, but despite this, many children would stay up late to watch some of the shows exclusive to Adult Swim, or they would just use Cartoon Network as background noise to fall asleep to. Unfortunately, these children would also suffer through some pretty disturbing commercials and bumpers, such as this one here. In case you are not aware, Valve is the main developer and publisher of various video game titles such as Half-Life and the Portal games. In these games, they would play an intro highlighting their name, and this one just so happened to be really creepy. A bald man with a valve stuck into the back of his head turns around to glare at the player, but before he can complete the movement, the clip ends. Everything about this clip is just very creepy, with the visual effects and the music ominously playing in the background.
Burger King and the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission want you to know about the voluntary recall of this Pokemon Pokeball. The ball may pose a suffocation hazard to children under 3. Throw the ball away or return it to Burger King. The safety of your child is of the utmost importance to us.
During 1999 and 2000, Burger King released a set of just under 60 Pokemon toys in an effort to promote the Pokemon movie titled Pokemon the First Movie. As we have just heard from the earlier PSA, these toys would eventually be recalled as they would be deemed a choking hazard. In December of 1999, a 13-month-old girl in California suffocated on the Pokeball container and was found deceased in her playpen with half of the ball covering her nose and mouth. Following her passing, the county sheriff's department would issue a warning about the containers. Only 2 days later, the Consumer Product Safety Commission would demand that Burger King issue a recall on the containers, which Burger King at first refused to do. Reason being, they did not want to issue a public statement that could cause the parents to become anxious, and they wanted to wait for an official autopsy report stating that the cause of death was indeed the toy. Very soon, Burger King would comply and conduct a $1 million recall campaign to get these Pokeballs back. This campaign would include the addition of choking hazard warnings on the packaging, which was not present before. But despite these efforts, a 4-month-old boy in Indiana would also suffocate to death as a result of the toy. Something about the announcement is just very unsettling. Pokemon being a source of entertainment and joy for many children being presented in a morbid setting with nothing but a monotone woman speaking and the static of the TV in the background definitely sends chills down your spine. Lost media is another topic that has really caught fire in the last few years on YouTube. Lost media is an umbrella term referring to hundreds of thousands of videos, songs, photos, etc. that have been stowed away by rich collectors or simply lost throughout the years. But why is the concept of lost media so creepy? It seems whenever we search the term or watch a YouTube video on the topic, the atmosphere instantly shifts into one of eeriness. One factor that I think plays a key role is nowadays we have a plethora of information at the tips of our fingers, and the fact that something could just simply disappear with no trace at all is quite strange. With how interconnected we are on the internet today, how is it that we can't find a single person who knows the whereabouts of X piece of lost media? And then of course there are many pieces of lost media that are now stowed away because they were too graphic for commercial release. Some of these films may contain actual incidents where crew members lost their lives on film, or simply contain scenes that were too morbid. So knowing that some of these pieces of lost media may already contain subject matter that is rarely seen just further adds to the creepiness of the topic. Missing number refers to the glitch Pokemon that can be found in the Pokemon games Red, Blue, and Yellow. In Red and Blue, the glitch Pokemon is a dual type of normal and bird, while in Yellow, the Pokemon will be a mix between normal and another random typing. In Red and Blue, the glitch will take the form of the following image, and the Yellow version of the game has this red and yellow colored glitch because it uses the color palette belonging to Pikachu. Furthermore, the glitch within Pokemon Yellow will cause various glitches that the ones in Blue and Red will not, such as randomly rendering the player invisible, making duplicates of the player, and then causing random characters to walk around the screen when in a battle. But these are not the only two forms of missing number. Missing number also has two fossil forms and a ghost form. The fossil forms can either be of the Kabutops fossil sprites or an Aerodactyl fossil sprite, while the ghost form uses the ghost sprite found in the Pokemon Tower. Back in the 2000s, I remember the sounds of the GameCube and the PlayStation 2 startups very well. Both of these weren't really all that creepy at the time, but now in hindsight, some of these console startup screens were definitely a little unsettling. Or more specifically, the music choice was kinda odd. Both the GameCube and PS2 had background checks that felt kind of abstract and spatial, I guess you could say. They give you a sort of empty feel. I'm not sure if this will make any sense, but hearing these sounds now almost makes me feel cosmic, especially the startup for the Dreamcast console. Cuphead is a platformer game that has captured the hearts of the public. The vintage aesthetic paired with the easy to pick up gameplay just makes for an amazing time. And while it isn't a horror game, some of the imagery and specifically the bosses are downright creepy. Personally, it's the devil boss that does it for me. I absolutely love the design of this character, but it doesn't fail to give me a sense of unease when I look at him. At one point in the stage, the devil will jump out of his skin and his skeleton will descend to a lower level, all the while leaving his lifeless skin gaping on his throne. The following stage would have the devil donning an enormous sharp grin paired with large glowing eyes on a massive head in the background. As the fight progresses, the devil will begin wailing like a child and cry tears of blood, but along with the beautiful visuals that are created for the various bosses in the game, the audio and music in the background just amplify the eeriness of these bosses. Cats is a live-action musical film released in 2019. When the film was originally released, social media had an absolute field day roasting the characters in the movie. Despite having an all-star cast of celebrities and musicians including Taylor Swift, Idris Elba, Jason Derulo, and much more, the film did terribly in the box office, resulting in a net loss. Today, the main takeaway people got from the movie was the grotesque costume design of the cats. The lifelike humanoid appearance did a psychological number on many viewers. These cat designs touch back on the Uncanny Valley. When something appears too humanoid but is in fact not human, it just creeps us out. We just are not able to tell where the human ends and the cat begins with these designs. It's a human silhouette, but it's covered in cat fur. The face and head have features of a cat, but the face itself is fundamentally human. Furthermore, critics found the CGI was quite unnerving, but various filmmakers actually said that the CGI technology used in this film was revolutionary. I haven't actually watched the entire movie, but from the various clips and trailers I've seen, I think the weirdest part of the film is the atmosphere. To be more specific, the film felt as if there was an overlooming sexual tension throughout. This is made even weirder when you remember the film is about cats. Like, why do they have these lumps that are supposed to look like boobs when cats don't have anything like that? I guess that's just another thing that adds to the question of where does the human begin and the cat end? And then if these lumps are indeed breasts, why do some cats wear clothes and some don't? I'm just really confused. I've never watched Pingu as a child, but this episode is definitely nightmare fuel. Pingu is a stop-motion children's TV series from the 1980s which starred the fun-loving penguin character known as Pingu. In one episode, Pingu can be found being carried away in his bed, and from a glance, it seems although Pingu is having a great time, but we as the viewer can observe a walrus in the background stalking Pingu as he passes. Eventually, the walrus would jump scare Pingu and begin laughing, albeit the actual jump scare wasn't bad at all, but the design of the walrus is just horrendous. The taut leather skin, the real human-like teeth, the tendril-like whiskers, and then those glossed over fish eyes all came together to give thousands of children around the world nightmares for years. Again, the original version wasn't all that terrifying, but there are various YouTube edits that just make the laugh of the walrus so much worse and the actual jump scare really bad. The PlayStation 1 has given us many classic video games such as Final Fantasy VII, Resident Evil, Metal Gear Solid, and much more. But due to the technical limitations of this generation's consoles, the graphics were quite poor. Nowadays, we look back at these graphics and can sometimes get a bit creeped out. The atmosphere, the stiff controls, and the music all make for an unsettling experience. Furthermore, since some of these games couldn't handle too much data, the worlds of these games would also feel very empty, giving you a sense of isolation. I'm sure a lot of you guys have watched various streamers and YouTubers play newer games such as The Closing Shift, which also uses similar graphics to the PS1. The blank stares and stiff movements of the characters in the game, as well as the lack of music, are all elements that can be found in old PS1 games. These elements assist in causing the player to be uncomfortable, especially the lack of music, which amplifies the ambient sounds in the game, creating a much more sinister atmosphere. Liminal spaces are typically locations that act as a transition between two other locations, but they are oftentimes abandoned or empty, which gives them the illusion of being frozen and unsettling. But oddly enough, we still gravitate towards these locations as they emanate a feeling of familiarity. These spaces can range from office rooms, hallways, stairwells, schools, malls, airport lobbies, and a ton more. All of these liminal spaces share a common trait of emptiness, when they are more so known for being bustling with people. While not all viewers, including myself, itself may be afraid of being alone in these various locations, what I find off-putting is the possibility of someone or something that is lying deeper within watching over me. The fear of the unknown is much more morbid to me personally than the actual emptiness of liminal spaces. In recent years, this concept has been popularized by the Backrooms, which is an urban legend about an endless maze of various levels and rooms. Being stuck in a completely unknown dimension with no knowledge of how to escape creates a sense of hopelessness. So I thought I was the only one who found this weird as a kid. When I watched TV as a child, I would never let the credits to show start playing. Whenever a show on, say, Nickelodeon would end, I would switch to Cartoon Network, and again, when a show is about to end there, I'll switch to another channel before I can see the credits. Because of this, I actually never saw the SpongeBob credits for years, but once I did, I felt oddly uncomfortable. I can't describe why I felt this way, and since I'm not a student of music theory, I can't break down the mechanics of the track to try and find out why it creeped me out. But I came across this post on Reddit that does a solid job of breaking down why this track may have caused some children to feel uncomfortable. People of all ages tend to prefer consonant sounds to dissonant sounds, but I'd guess most adults habituate to the occasional tritone or whatnot and learn to perceive them as tension building rather than scary. Kids, on the other hand, are still forming their mental model for music and may not recognize it as such, which implies they have an idea of right and wrong notes without context to understand that the wrong notes are often purposely included. I'm not surprised a 5-year-old expecting everything to be in a major or minor key and resolve to some root feels uneasy with a song that does neither. This post was a reply to this comment on the original post, and if you're interested in this topic and would like to read more, feel free to pause the video and read the following comments. When creators of various media, whether it be shows, comics, movies, whatever, don't feel like keeping a character going, they will either write them out through death or simply have them leave of their own accord. However, those that suffer from Chuck Cunningham syndrome will simply disappear without reasoning. Oftentimes, these characters are retconned out of their stories and the remaining characters will carry on as though the missing character never even existed. The origin of the name Chuck Cunningham syndrome came from a show called Happy Days from the 1970s. In the show, there would be two characters named Richie and Joni Cunningham. These two characters would have an older brother named Chuck who was only present for 2 seasons. In the later seasons, both of the Cunningham parents would say that they only had 2 children, seemingly wiping Chuck from existence. This idea gives me some loose feelings of existential horror. Chuck's existence was literally not acknowledged at all by his family in the show, despite definitely having a lasting effect on his family members' lives. His existence was essentially meaningless and no one would remember him. AirHeads commercials and Capri Sun commercials were some of my favorites in the 2000s. While being cartoonish in nature for the most part, some of the commercials left some kids disturbed, such as this one here where 2 friends are seen eating AirHeads. One of their heads begins inflating into the AirHeads balloon, and while this is happening, the other kid asks, "Why didn't you blast off?" Eventually, the kid that ate the AirHead would explode. When I first saw this commercial as a kid, I didn't think anything of it, but now that I've matured a lot more, I definitely question blowing up someone's head, even if it is heavily censored. More modern AirHeads commercials have somewhat deviated from this, but they still retain the balloon head appearance. And instead of taking on the exact appearance of the AirHeads logo, these modern commercials would depict realistic 3D-like renditions of the actors, again touching on the Uncanny Valley aspect of humanoid faces. The Noid was a short-lived mascot under the Domino's pizza chain. At first, the commercials that featured the Noid would be a massive success that instantly launched Domino's into a pizza war with Pizza Hut. However, one day a 22-year-old named Kenneth Lamar Noid would walk into a Domino's restaurant clutching a revolver. He took 2 employees hostage for over 5 hours. Eventually though, the 2 hostages would escape and Noid would be apprehended and charged. During the interrogation, police would find out that Noid wasn't motivated by tangible items, but rather he thought that the Domino's pizza chain was exclusively targeting him with the Noid advertising campaign. Kenneth thought that the comical nature of the Noid commercials was made to mock him and actively telling people around the US to stay away from him. Of course, this was a terrible day for Domino's as they would now have to vault their immensely successful mascot in order to bury the negative association the mascot now now had with the incident. Kenneth would later be sent to a mental institution, but unfortunately in 1995 he would take his own life. For some people, the story is what makes the Noid unintentionally creepy, while for others it's just the strange design and noises the Noid makes when on screen. And there is one more thing I would like to add on that isn't directly tied with the Noid, but I thought was still interesting. During the Noid advertising campaign, Domino's was also running a promo where if your pizza delivery arrived later than 30 minutes after ordering, you would get the option of a replacement or a refund for your pizza. This promo would cause delivery drivers to drive recklessly in order to meet the time limit, which resulted in over 20 fatalities. The various lawsuits would also amount to almost $80 million being paid out to the victims' families. This promotion, of course, was also terminated. This entry may be a hit or miss for you. I personally hate the ocean and I find it immensely terrifying. Subnautica is an open world survival game where players can explore the richly designed ocean of an alien planet. While Subnautica isn't exactly a horror game, many aspects of it are designed to make you feel uneasy and keep you on edge. You are all alone on this alien planet and you have to survive underwater. The alien planet being unknown, and then of course the ocean being a natural place where humans typically avoid. Both of these, in my opinion, combined make for a very terrifying situation. Players can seemingly mind their own business going around the map gathering resources like limestone when they are suddenly attacked by a giant sea monster. The whole premise of the game is to explore, and the game devs obviously know that, so they intentionally add unsettling ambiance as well as the eerily designed sea creatures to create ample opportunities for you to shit your pants. I won't spend too much time on this entry as there really isn't too much info to convey, but the FBI warning screen refers to this screen found on old VHS tapes warning viewers about the dangers of piracy. I never found these creepy, but I found that some users were unsettled by the intense dead silence that occupies the screen. Again, another entry that I won't spend too much time on as there isn't too much information to actually communicate with you guys. But I personally did not find the THX logo to be very creepy as a child, but many viewers disliked the loud and jarring audio that accompanied the THX logo when it came on screen. Similar to the other entry of various console intros, the music does a lot in making the viewer uncomfortable. Mr. Blobby was a character featured on Noel Edmonds' Saturday Night Variety Show. Mr. Blobby appeared as a large pink monster with yellow spots across his body as well as an exaggerated grin. The character would be used to jump scare various guests on the show and was actually pretty popular in UK pop culture, going as far as even getting his own video game, albeit it was just a reskin of another game. Unlike the other entries on this iceberg, I believe Mr. Blobby was actually intentionally created to be creepy. Mr. Blobby was made as a parody of various children's TV characters, but the creators wanted to be able to use them to scare adults that appeared on the show. While only some adults may have actually been creeped out by Mr. Blobby, I'm sure many children watching TV alongside their parents at the time did not expect to encounter this monstrosity. Now, this one definitely made me uncomfortable as a child. During nights when I watched shows such as King of the Hill, The Simpsons, Family Guy, etc., I would never stay past the credits because of this logo clip. Shh. Oftentimes when I watched these shows, I would be alone upstairs, and after the scene would finish, it would be followed up by a dead silence that made me immensely uncomfortable. It didn't help that the actual ending scene depicted a movie theater gradually getting darker as well. Then the girl shushing was the cherry on top for making a younger version of me too scared to leave my room and step into the dark hallway downstairs. And that's gonna mark the end for part 1 of the Unintentionally Creepy Media Iceberg. If you made it till here, thank you so much for your time. If you enjoyed the video, leaving a like would really help me out. But for now, if you're looking for more content, feel free to check out one of the videos on the right. With that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you all again very soon.